And a very good evening, everyone. Welcome into your box seat, brought to you in association with Woodland Start, of course, home to champion side Bettor's Delight. Sweet Lou's made such an impression already, and a whole host of others. We really appreciate the continued support of Woodland Stud. In these weird and strange times around the world, it means the box seat. I'm in Christchurch, Michael Guerin's in Auckland, and Michael, unprecedented waters we are travelling through at the moment. As I say, a very good evening to you.
Evening, Greg. A big hi to everybody. I hope you're safe and well, which of course is a concern for everybody these days, even down in this part of the world. Greg, tonight we're going to talk to Peter Jensen, the boss of Harness Racing New Zealand, because of course lots of people out there watching have questions, and we're going to try and put some of those questions to him, but we have to be realistic. Peter and nobody else has answers to many of these questions, Greg, and we'll try and talk to people about what is going to happen heading forward under the current time frame, Gregory. But as we both know, and the people watching at home know, the rules are changing by the day.
Yep, they certainly are, Michael. So what's ahead for you on your box seat? We will start with the boss of Harness Racing New Zealand, CEO Peter Jensen, very, very shortly. We'll also have a look back at some of our feature races from last weekend, and obviously preview Addington Raceway, a premier night of harness racing, which will be run in front of no people, essentially, just industry personnel. And we'll also touch on the recent awards, the Rural Awards up there in Palmerston North, where we had a couple of highlights for our harness racing participants. More about that as the show rolls on, but we're kindly joined by Peter Jensen, who's in Wellington. He's been in several crucial meetings over the last couple of days. Very good evening to you, Peter. Thanks so much for your time, these times that can only really be described as extraordinary.
Absolutely, Greg. I think unprecedented. That's the situation that none of us have had to deal with anything like this before, and to some extent you have to make the rules up as you go. But I think we've got good guidance from the government in terms of their expectations from the Ministry of Health, and of course there's a lot of precedent created in terms of what's happening elsewhere in the world, both in racing and in sport.
It's obviously imperative, Peter, at this stage, if we can, to keep our sport going, and one of the few sports that around the world is being continued at the moment, that we can continue to get returns in and therefore distribute them amongst our participants.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's the nature of our business. That's how we operate. It's based on wagering. Everybody understands that. That's where the state money comes from. But of course, the first priority has got to be the health and well-being of our participants, and that's why we're looking to exclude anyone that doesn't need to be on a course, won't be on a course, and the reason for that is essentially to keep people safe. The less people that are about, the less risk that we impose. We know that that's not commonly popular with everybody, and particularly with owners, and Friday night's a good example. We've got such a big meeting and people want to be there to see their horse race and big races, as I would as an owner, and I am an owner with a horseman and a much smaller meeting on Sunday where I'd like to be there. But the reality is, we're doing what's right because we're trying to protect the future of the industry, and of course we're trying to protect the welfare of our participants.
Peter, the rules from the government suggest that we can't have groups of people of more than 500 on track. If we use a number off the top of my head, and it's impossible to quantify because it depends on how many horses are going to the races, but if we use a number that, say, 200 people are needed to run a race meeting, is there any room for other people to come along? For example, if you opened spectators at Addington as an area separate from the horse people to let 200 owners come watch their horses, or does that just get too complicated? Is it simply a case now that it's just easier and safer to make it essential personnel only?
Yeah, like you've summed it up well, mate. It is easier and it's safer. So if you, as an example, if we opened spectators and the Witcher Syndicate came, then there's your 200 people tied up in one hit. So how do you differentiate one owner from the next in a situation like that? And the same applies to sponsors. I've had calls around sponsors, and they're a really important part of the industry. But I think everybody understands what we're proposing is not out of line with what everybody else is doing, what we're seeing with Harness Racing Victoria this week, Harness Racing New South Wales. We will have seen British Horse Racing was closed down last night, and that came after the decision that we made So look, we've just got to do the right thing to give us every opportunity to be able to race as long as we can.
Peter, you're in Wellington and therefore you are having probably intelligence or meetings from government agencies which people watching this show aren't able to get directly. We know in advance some other sports have been told. Things, for example, like about the 14-day quarantine periods, and now there's also talk about the borders being closed. What are you hearing that could impact harness racing participants in particular in the near future?
I think probably the two real risks. One, of course, is that somebody from within the industry contracts COVID-19, and so that'll be more decisions to make if we get to that point. And the second one, of course, is if the 500 limit went to 50, for example, and we're hearing that's happening in other parts of the world, then it'd be pretty difficult to run a race meeting if we couldn't have more than 50 people there. So I think that's probably the two key risk areas for us going forward at present.
Okay, Peter, say for example, and we're hoping this doesn't happen, but a stable hand who heads to Addington on Friday night tests positive or for coronavirus next Wednesday. And again, we're talking about hypotheticals, but we're trying to answer questions in people's minds. What happens then? Because I know there's a fear among some people if one industry participant goes down, then the industry can have to shut down. But of course, that doesn't really gel with the rest of the real world. If one plumber in West Auckland goes down, they don't shut down the entire plumbing industry. So what happens if a person in racing, to the best of your knowledge, was to contract or show signs of the coronavirus? What would happen next? And is there any contingencies in play for that?
Yeah, so I think what we need to do is take advice in those situations. We're not medical professionals. So we would certainly be looking to take advice. And the example you give is a good one. So what it might do, for example, is affect one area as opposed to all racing, one island as opposed to the other. I guess what we need to be able to do, and one of the reasons for being able to limit the number of people on course is we want to be able to trace everybody that was on course. So it gives us the opportunity to better understand what contact may or may not have happened. And it's a similar situation if you think about it. When we're reading with people on planes, that they're not looking to contact everybody that was on the plane. What they're looking to do is to say, well, who was within 2 rows of that person? So those are the sort of things we need to take into consideration. And as I say, the number one thing is that we would take advice. There certainly won't be any knee-jerk reaction to close down all racing on the basis of one person contracting COVID-19.
We see in the thoroughbred industry, Peter, that they have basically quarantined each island. So a jockey who lives in the North Island cannot ride in the South Island. We haven't done that yet. I realise it's done to keep the two industries in separate pods, more or less, as much as you can. Why has harness racing not moved to that?
Look, we did consider it. I think that the key difference between us and thoroughbreds is the very small pool of jockeys they have available, and clearly that's related to that not many of us can walk around at 52 or 53 kilos, so we have a much wider pool of participants available, and probably less movement too. We've got a few drivers that move regularly between the islands and some trainers for the feature meetings, but we understand why thoroughbreds went down that path. But we're happy with the decision that we've made. There's no advice from the government about not travelling. I flew this morning on a full plane from Christchurch to Wellington. Your viewers are pleased to know that I was on a Jetstar flight. And I would expect when I fly home again this evening, it'll also be a full flight or close to it.
Peter, what happens, for example, I know the TAB are doing modelling and they've lost sports betting from overseas. That's already going to enormously affect the bottom line for next season. What models have you heard and what information have you been given by the TAB about distribution in the future? Because a lot of people out there are wondering, how's this going to affect me? Are stakes going to go down? Are we going to have less race meetings? What can you tell us about the economics or the models you've seen about the economics of the potential effect as it stands now, as we look at maybe April 13 with no spectators? We know, Peter, this can change in the future, but what are you being told at the moment?
Look, to be fair, that we know the TAB is doing a huge amount of work, and Dean McKenzie, the executive chair, is meeting with the co-chairs tomorrow to give them an update on exactly what you're talking about there, Mick. So we'll have a better sense of what that looks like. But of course, in the end, it's only scenario analysis at present because we don't actually know where we're going to end up. but I think it would be naive to think that there wasn't some impact on income, because the reality is, as I said earlier, we are an industry built on wagering, and that wagering is both what comes directly through our racing product, but also, of course, sports betting contributes significantly to the TAB's overall profitability. So, look, I think in the end we can't react to something that we don't know, but clearly there'll have to be some serious conversations if we were in a situation where there was less income in the industry for a period.
Peter, there's going to be people watching this at home who don't have a lot of money in the bank. They are living like horse trainers in a month-to-month basis, and economically things haven't been great, and they've been hoping something good would happen. Now something bad has happened. From what you heard yesterday coming out of government about the $12 billion plus relief packages to various areas involved in this country, what can people at home do if they are fearful of not being able to pay their rent, or they're a stable hand and they're fearful they're going to lose their job? Because a lot of those words coming out of government yesterday are going to be scary for them, and they're not going to fully understand them. Can you try and disseminate some of that information for our viewers inside the industry about what financial lifelines are available to them?
Well, I think that the key opportunity is the wage support that the government has on offer. I think that makes perfect sense, and racing's part of society. That's the reason that we've made the move that we have, and as that is the case, then people in racing running their business have access to the support that the government's offered. So we will be providing more information for people. You do need to have proved a 30% drop in revenue in any 1 month to be able to access it. And so, again, right now, that probably access isn't available unless people are in that situation themselves through a drop of income for whatever reason that might be, with resources in the stable. It is available. It's available to the race industry as it's available to any other industry. So we'll be disseminating that advice and letting people know. I've had a look, and the ability to access it is pretty straightforward. So that's promising. I think they've made it a simple process, and I know the approval process will be quick. So again, I would encourage people to make themselves aware of what's available, and if they're eligible, then there's no reason they shouldn't apply for that support.
Peter, let's go to the worst possible business scenario, because we know the worst possible human scenario is something we don't want to think about, and we hope we never have to think about. What happens if in a week's time the government says to you, you have to shut down racing? For people watching at home, you may not know the answer to this question. But what happens if there's no harness racing from next week and it lasts for 3 months? What can Harness Racing New Zealand do? What can we do for the participants? What can we do as an industry to survive if that scenario becomes reality?
So that's not a decision that we can make in isolation, Nick. I think that would be a decision that we would make in conjunction with RITA or the TAB, with the other codes who we've been working closely with, and I think also with the government, to understand what support would be available to an industry like ours in a situation like that. The reality, as everybody knows, is that there's not a lot of money floating around the industry in terms of what's on the balance sheet, either at RITA or in our case at Harness Racing New Zealand. So what we have to understand is what mechanisms would be in place to support people in the industry if that situation occurred. And as I said, not something that we would do in isolation. We'd certainly be working very hard with government and with RITA to understand what we could do.
Peter, we really appreciate you coming on and trying to give us a bit of an insight into this overall situation. We do understand that it's evolving and changing almost by the hour. Just to touch on a couple of other things away from COVID-19 and the coronavirus, Team Teal and the effort by HRNZ and a whole lot of other people, headed up by Courtney from your organisation, Courtney Clark. I'm sure that you, of all people, would like to acknowledge that they got over $50,000 and created something that, a few years ago wasn't even in New Zealand. The goal was to get to $20,000. To exceed $50,000, there's certainly some plaudits need to go out there.
They do, and certainly it needs to go. Courtney's done a fantastic job coordinating. She's very passionate about it. And of course, the clubs have been hugely supportive. I don't think we could name a club that hasn't got behind it to one degree or another. Lots of people and sponsors in the industry have supported it. And the lady drivers themselves, of course, do a wonderful job. They represent our sport so well, and I don't think there's a better cause around. So it's one that we're thrilled to be behind. I was at a meeting at Hiranui of all places, not a tab meeting, of course, but the kids' carts were there and the girls were there with their teal pants, and it looked fantastic. It's got a great feel-good factor to it, and I hope it's something that we can be involved in with some time to come.
Yep, and the support of ovarian cancer and some of the statistics that we'll hear later in the show from Courtney are quite surprising. You may well not really understand just how dangerous this disease is. Also over the weekend, Peter, on a positive note, the Ford Ranger New Zealand Rural Games were held, and at their awards, a couple of our industry participants got recognised. The Lifetime Legacy Award to Ricky May, and I know that he has accepted that on behalf of not only himself but the industry. That was a huge positive, and the Young Sportswoman of the Year went to Sarah O'Reilly, who's just continued on this magnificent run that she's been on.
Absolutely. I was absolutely thrilled for both of them and for our sport to be recognised in such a esteemed company. If you look at the people they're nominated against, it's a real achievement for both Ricky, who represents our sport so well and for such a long time, and then a young woman like Sarah, who's had such great success already, being well supported by people because she's doing a good job. And again, she represents our industry so well, she speaks well, and she's the sort of person that we'd love to have at the face of our sport for many years to come.
Well said. Thanks so much again for your time, Peter. I know it's extremely busy. We'll hope to get updates as they happen from you, and anyone can go to the website. That's the best place to go at this stage. That's where everything will be updated as soon as it happens.
Well, absolutely. Look, we've had quite a bit of feedback, and I would like to say that the majority of the feedback has been very positive. There's one or two people who are upset that they can't attend the course, but most people have seen the bigger picture, and so I'd like to thank all the participants in the industry for the support they're given. As we said at the start, these are extraordinary times, and at the end of the day, you have to take extraordinary measures when you're in that situation. So thanks to everybody, and we wish everybody the best over the coming weeks.
All right, that's Peter Jensen, CEO of Harness Racing New Zealand. Michael, out of Wellington, where so many of these crisis meetings, it's the only way really to describe it, are being held, and because it's such an evolving situation, you touched on it a few times, we can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in a month or so's time when, of course, at this stage, it's in place until the 13th of April.
It's a multi-layered conversation, Greg, and there's the basic level of how does it affect you or I or the people watching the show. And to speak to that, the most obvious thing you can do is obviously keeping safe and some social distancing, which obviously at the moment in this country isn't as big a problem for us as it might be for other people because we don't have too many hotspots of COVID-19. How can you try and financially guard against this? Well, it's very simple. You can race your horse. A horse can't make any money sitting in the paddock, Greg. So if you've got a horse and you think we'll race it in 3 weeks' time, there may be no racing in 3 weeks' time. I hope there's racing in 3 weeks' time, and maybe there will be. But if it shuts down in 3 weeks' time and you thought you would give your horse a mini break now, you're probably not seeing things the way they need to be seen. That's the best thing you can do at the moment is race while there are races, Gregory, because if they stop, that income will come out of the industry. And that's something we don't know the answer to. The other thing too is we need to be responsible, Greg. Just because on a Friday afternoon you might jump in the truck with Bob and head to the races and you're used to doing that and you don't need tickets at the front gate because everybody knows you. Those days are gone and we can't get upset that they're gone. We can't be saying to people, but I've done this for the last 20 years. All the rules have changed and these are becoming legislations and laws and regulations which could close the entire industry down. So just because you've always done things, you're a trainer's wife or a trainer's husband or whatever, and that's the way you do things, don't think you can do that anymore, Greg, because one wrong step from a person involved in something like that could be the thing that closes the industry down and cost people watching the show hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's very much the New Zealand way, Greg, to say, oh, well, it's cool, I do that all the time and we always go here and she'll be right. But in this situation, the rules are going to be so strict that it won't be right. So we have, as a group of people, Greg, we have a responsibility to not be doing these things. Now, I might go to Alexandra Park on Friday night in my capacity as a journalist to write a story about what it is like there. but there'll be no chance I'll bring 3 or 4 people with me. I won't be going around shaking people's hands. All the things we're used to doing, Greg, we need to rethink and get them set in your head before you go. Because if you go there and start falling back to normal behaviour, Greg, then we increase chances that the industry could be stopped. And what we're trying to do is, along with staying safe, Gregory, is make sure racing continues so there's some sort of revenue coming through. The TAB will meet with the codes tomorrow to outline the financial models. Racing stopping would be disastrous, but Gregory, what's going to be really hard is all the overseas sport stopping. That's going to affect the bottom line. And we may be entering territory where even if racing goes ahead, Gregory, every day for the next 365 days outside Christmas and Easter, even if it goes ahead, we may be looking at stakes cuts in the future because the overall TAB line is certain to go down. But Greg, that's the only advice I can give you about what's happening now and what we need to do as an industry now, because what's happening tomorrow could very much change by the time we get there.
All right, that's a wrap on the coronavirus and COVID-19 at this stage. We're about to take a short break on your box seat because we have a premier harness race meeting at Addington Raceway on Friday night. We'll do our best to go through those fields and find you a couple of winners. Welcome back into your box seat. Time for us to start looking at Addington Raceway on Friday night. A crucial race meeting leading forward to races like the Derby for both the Pacers and the Trotters. And we've got a really strong undercard around those 4 or 5 features too. We're going to start off with the Vero Flying Stakes. In the last 20 years, half a dozen winners of this race have gone on and won the New Zealand Derby. So clearly it's a crucial race in that regard. Michael, here's Hero Square. He's 3 from 3 for Robert and John Dunn. Gets up alongside Minstrel, who was beautifully driven by Bob Butt. But gee, showed some tenacity, this horse who's going places fast.
Yeah, he's a pretty good horse, Gregory. We're not sure how good yet because he hasn't beaten horses who are as good as the horses he's going to race this week. I mean, obviously One Change and Copy That are the big two, but Greg, I think Robert Dunn and John Dunn's opinion of this horse even holds more sway than some of the videos we could look up on hrnz.co.nz about him. So, Greg, you spoke to him. Robert's pretty much in raptures about this horse and suggested that it's only because of injuries and concerns in the past that we haven't seen a larger body of work from him.
Yep, so let's hear what he had to say on Friday night. Well, that performance showed us that he's got a bit of bottom to him.
Yeah, he has, Greg. I thought last week he did too, but I thought more tonight. You know, he went back and that's a very good horse that led up, and I didn't think he was going to get past him, so to his credit he fought. And Johnny never pushed him, so he fought like a tiger up the straight. When he pushed the button, he really showed some quick bit of, ability to be able to get over top of him.
Johnny said to me at 2 he really liked this horse, but obviously there was a problem there with his fetlock, and you put him aside, but it might stand to him because he's really developed into a good type.
He's a magnificent looking horse. He reminds me so much of Say My Name. A good horse that we had, and he gives me the impression that he can obviously take the next step, and not just because of his ability but his size. He's got a lot of presence about him, and he looks like a good horse, and he is a good horse.
I know you're going to have a think about it. The Vero might be on the radar. The Derby clearly is, but he'll tell you.
Absolutely. Look, we've got to look after this horse, and the owners are such tremendous owners of Newman's and their friends. They just do whatever we say, which is, you can't beat owners like that. So we'll have a good look at him on Monday and just check him out with Sam Taylor, our vet, and we'll make sure we're right on track. And if we think he needs just to wait for the Derby, we'll do it because it's a special race to win. It's one of those races that, if you're a trainer, you love winning. It's a bit like the New Zealand Cup. If you've got a good 3-year-old, the Derby's the race, the New Zealand Derby.
You're excited about this horse, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, and excited about trying to win another Derby after the Master. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, quarter of a century ago, plus since Master Musician won the Derby. $11 into $6 for the Derby now, Michael. But I think it's vindicated, although this week it's not going to be easy for him because he takes on the horses, of course, have already placed in a Derby, second and third, One Change, and Copy That.
Look, it's hard to see him beating them. I'm not saying they're unbeatable because they were beaten by a filly last time out, but I don't know how good this horse is. John Dunn and Robert know how good this horse is. I know how good these two horses are. Here's Copy That back in the green, 3 back on the inside, pulling to the middle of the track. Thought he had his chance here to beat Amazing Dream. I thought he didn't close on her as much as maybe I would have thought he would. And there's one change, one off the markers, finishing third and very, very brave. Greg, I think before the Derby at Alexandra Park, which is only a week and a half ago and feels like 2 months ago, the way the world's moving at the moment. I think before the Derby, Greg, most people thought Copy That was a better horse than One Change. I definitely did. I'm not so sure now. I'm not sure if he underperformed there, whether losing momentum at that speed affected him more than maybe I give him credit for. I can't make a case for him to beat One Change this week if One Change has got barrier 1 and he's drawn out wide, Gregory. But that's just how I viewed the Derby. It is only a one-off performance. Before that, I thought he had the wood on One Change. One Change has to be favourite this week, Greg, and I think he has to be a dominant favourite.
Yeah, let's have a look at the market for the Vero this week. And he's come up with barrier 1 again. His strike rate at getting good barriers and feature races is nothing short of staggering. But $2.40 for One Change. Natalie Rasmussen saying after the Northern Derby she thought it was his career best run, and when he's amassed over 500,000, I think you have to take notice of what she had to say there. Copy That, new driver this week. Blair Orange takes the reins for Ray Green. Hero Square to take on this level of 3-year-old for the first time. He's come up with an awful draw, barrier 9, and then you've got the Northerner bad to the bone inside second row. Michael, he might end up in a terrific spot following through One Change, and when you consider how important this race is going forward to the Derby in a couple of weeks' time, this is going to be the best guide we've had, I believe.
Yeah, and it's crucial what One Change does on 2 fronts. First of all, One Change potentially winning the race. If he gets crossed, there's a really good chance that whoever crosses him may hand up to a Copy That. So while you think, being in the trail wouldn't be too bad, if he gets crossed, Blair Orange isn't going to wait. He'll launch Copy That, and then the whole complexion of the race changes. If One Change holds up, the other scenario, Greg, not only does he become clearly the horse to beat, but also bad to the bone becomes an excellent top 3 chance because he should be sitting in the trail or thereabouts, Greg. So, look, the start's absolutely crucial here. You know the gate speed of the southern horses more than I do. Do you see a horse here between One Change and Copy That who can get across One Change?
Probably Minstrel. We saw him lead last week. I don't think Bob Budd will be going back at the start, so he might have a look. But as we know, Natalie's such a good gate driver. I can see her holding the front here and dictating over the shorter course. They only have to run to the winning post and it's a lap to go. I don't think there'll be any handing up, and if she's in front, she is obviously the one to beat. Looking forward to the lead up to the Derby, the Vero. It's also a big night for the trotting fillies. It's Oaks time with What the Hill sponsoring this year's Trotting Oaks, and this is at Group 2 level. Michael, and Tailored Elegance got the business done in the Oaks down there at Invercargill. It's just her 3rd career win, but obviously she's come through the Orari race, the Geraldine race, and has lifted off that performance because her win at Invercargill was a good indication against very good opposition, Michael. She's getting past Majestic Chevron, who's once again a decent horse to beat. And Chevron Action rather, a decent one to beat, and getting through on the inside. Vacation Hill has the 2nd row this week, so Tailored Elegance is no doubt the one to beat in this year's Trotting Fillies Oaks.
Yeah, well, the key factor there is that before that race, Chloe Rose was the favourite, and Tailored Elegance had been beaten by her fair and square at Addington. So at Addington 2 starts ago, Chloe Rose was way too good for Tailored Elegance. We go south, and the other horse has reversed it by sitting parked outside it. That's a very, very large improvement curve. And that improvement curve, if it continues to even go that way, let alone going up, makes Tailored Elegance clearly the horse to beat with the advantage of the draw. Could start shorter than $1.85, Greg. I don't see anybody particularly backing Vacation Hill or Chloe Rose. So, yeah, I think she wins if she reproduces that form in saying that, she has been a little bit up and down. But now they've got her where they want her, now that Mark Purdon is home and will be doing the majority of the overseeing of the stable, and it's no one's fault to say things were going wrong when he was away, because they didn't go wrong. But I like backing their horses the most when Mark is on the property because it's his stable. And for that reason, I can't tip against Tainted Elegance.
Yeah, my apologies there. Of course, it was Chloe Rose, as you quite rightly pointed out, Michael. So that's the Group 2 Trotting Oaks at $50,000 level. We've got a couple of 4- and 5-year-old races, one being the time-honoured Superstars. But here's a look at the 4- and 5-year-old trot. Winterfell's come up $1.70. We'll have a look at his most recent trial shortly, Michael, where he was up against Oscar Bonavina, and they both come off the back mark. He is off the back mark again here, 30 metres behind, and he's come up $1.70. His form certainly through the Inter-Dominion series and post that warrants him being as short as that. Is that how you feel?
Greg, his form during the Inter-Dominions warrants him being $1.20. I mean, he won the National Trot and beat Oscar Bonavina and beat everything else. He beat Majestic Man and those horses. So the $1.70's only there because people still don't trust the horse. Here he is in his most recent workout, and I thought on this occasion very good and good enough to beat these. This is a nice field without being an outstanding field. 30 metres shouldn't be a hassle for a horse like him. He should win, Greg. I think it just comes down to one thing and one thing only. Is he going to behave himself and try? And if he behaves himself and he tries, I still think the Paul Nairn pair of Lot of Muscle and Gil Favour are still coming to their peak, Greg, so the fact he's giving them 30 doesn't bother me. The other horses he's back on 10s and 20s and 30s with, well, you know, they're not even open class horses. They're not horses who have performed at an open class level. This horse has won virtually every open class race that matters, Greg. So, as you know, I have my doubts about the horse on occasions, but the $1.70 won't last. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts at $1.40.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that is the way I'll be talking him up on Friday night. I'm sure he is the one to beat because, yeah, the horses that are in front of him are certainly inferior on paper anyway, and certainly on his most recent form. Let's have a look at the 9th on the program, which of course is the Superstars. Changed a few years ago, Michael, to be for 4- and 5-year-olds, and that has meant that we've got a lot deeper numbers, numerically anyway. Another masterpiece is $1.80, and again, on his most recent form, he's won 3 of his last 5 starts, and his most recent win in Sydney was a very strong one.
It was, but the bookies have got this wrong, Gregory, and I think there's a sexy bet in here. I really like it. 888. Here's a horse who's been racing in Auckland Cups and Inter-Dominion finals, had no luck in the Hunter Cup, was enormous winning at Alexandra Park 2 starts ago coming from back in the field, which he may well have to do here. And then was enormous again running second sitting park last time. This is him sitting parked outside the leader. Beaten here by a horse in Gambit who's on the improve, but he still sat parked, and they just don't do this very often over 2,200 at the park. He's been a genuine open class horse all season and a genuine open class force. Whereas the other horses in this race, Henry Hubert's a horse I really like, but I think he's not well suited by one on the second line, Greg. And another masterpiece has produced a really stunning win in an Inter-Dominion Consolation, but you're only ever in an Inter-Dominion Consolation because you didn't or weren't good enough to get to the Inter-Dominion final. And the one we're going to show you coming up at Addington after that, and he's since gone on and won at Menangle, this is a really good one. He was very powerful here. But this isn't the top open class horses. No disrespect to these horses, but they're not the big boys. 888 has been rocking and rolling with the big boys all season, Greg. Another masterpiece when he's attempted to rock and roll with the big boys has been found exposed. I marked them in my head, for what it's worth, just off the top of my head, each of $2.80. That's what I think they are, Greg, and the rest of them out bigger odds because Henry Hubert's got the second line. The $5.50, Gregory, in my opinion, for 888 there, even though he's got to go back at the start, I see quite a few here going forward early and there could be early pressure, is absolutely outstanding and the best harness racing money you'll get this week.
So how does he win the race, though? Because looking at it, another Masterpiece will be trying to stay in front of him. Of course, we saw Triple Eight at the Cup meeting and he copped Ultimate Sniper that day in sublime form for sure. So how do you see him actually winning the race? What's he going to need to do over the short course from that draw? He's going to need to race up to his absolute best.
Yeah, I agree. I think what he has the option to do is, well, he's a great driver. And David Butcher, and he has the option to get on the back of whoever he wants. So he can even technically try and follow another Masterpiece across, because if another Masterpiece does work toward the lead, which I think is going to be hard to do, then he gets to stalk him. But I think it comes down to straight out who's as good as each other. And over the last year, but definitely over the last 6 months, Triple Eight's been a better horse than another Masterpiece. As I said, I'm willing to discount Henry Hubert. I'm not saying he can't win, but I'm willing to discount him because of the second line in my betting equation. And Vintage Chetter's a horse I really like, Greg, but he's yet to win an open class race. So we have 2 open class horses in the race who have won open class races if, and this again it's an if, I'm willing to discount Henry Hubert. So that's the case, Greg. If you're flipping a coin between $1.80 and $5.50, it's a no-brainer. I'm not saying another Masterpiece can't win, but I'm not taking $1.80 about him, because when he recently got trapped wide at Menangle, he just dropped out. So $5.50 for Triple Eight, top driver, horse who's been in fantastic form all season, in a race where I see a little bit of pressure and an early speed. That means the horses out wide will both have to work. It's not like another Masterpiece is going to fall straight in front of him, Greg. I think it's outstanding money, and of course $5.50 should equate to about $1.80 for a place. I'm not sure what the top 3 place will be there, but either way, I'm happy to back him each way, Gregory, because at the moment, we all need a little bit more money, Greg.
Yes, we do, Michael. Well said. Let's move on to race number 5, 37th series for the Sire Stakes 2-year-olds with Garrard's First Class. $3.10, outstanding, of course, winning the kindergarten. We had a chance to have a look at that. Better Call Me was actually scratched in that race, and Delightful Dude finished second in it, so they're drawn up nicely in 1, 2 and 3. The intriguing runner here, Michael, is Krug, the reigning Cardigan Bay Stakes winner, who of course did this, coming up the passing lane and winning, Michael. He's going to be in a similar position, you would think, again, given that First Class has led from wider draws than what he has on Friday night.
I think he's the best of the 2-year-olds so far, Greg, and I thought he was pretty good here, because while he was going to win with that run, he was actually very strong through the line. But my concern for him is if Blair opts to stay behind First Class, then the First Class team have the option to hand up to one of their stablemates and put him 3 deep. Now, Blair's a very smart driver, so he might be awake to that, but put him in the trail behind First Class, Greg, and I want to be on him all day. Absolutely all day, and I'm loving 2.7, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the other Purdon horses goes forward, gets the lead off First Class, and it goes back around again. I don't know if that's going to happen. I've got no idea. But Greg, put him in the trail. Yes, I think he wins. Is he going to be in the trail with a lap to go? Doubtful.
Let's have a look at First Class, winning the outstanding race, of course, that is the kindergarten. He did this, Michael, in 156.6, first half in a minute, home in 56.6. 7 out of the last editions of this race have been won by the All-Stars. He beats Delightful Dude, who I thought was good. He would have learnt a lot from this experience, but he's a nippy wee guy, isn't he, First Class, and he just keeps on improving.
Look, I think he is improving, but if Krug was sitting where the other horse was sitting on his back, he would have gone straight past him. So, yeah, I don't think he can lead and win unless he leads with a stablemate on his back. If he leads with Krug on his back, he'll get beat, unless he's improving more than I can see to my eye, Greg. I think that form there is no different from the Sapling Stakes form, just by taking Krug out. So that didn't prove anything to me.
No, I have to agree there. Michael, that is in terms of the Premier Night at Addington Raceway, but Alexandra Park race, and one thing we didn't touch on with Peter Jensen was around the 5 races race meeting last week at the park, but I think that's a discussion for another day. They've got a good program.
Well, Greg, it's a funny thing, Greg. It's not that big a discussion. I was really surprised last week. There were a lot of people surprised there were 5 races at Alexandra Park. If you've been doing this for a long time, over the last 20 years, when they have a major carnival, the next week's terribly hard to get fields. Now, they also had a meeting at Manawatu, so a lot of horses who could have gone to Alexandra Park go to Manawatu. But when you have the back of a carnival, Gregory, the next week's always really tricky. Last week there was a meeting at Te Araha for the gallops, which was just cancelled. Just cancelled, didn't exist. Now, I don't see people jumping up and down about it because people are aware that people can't go everywhere sometimes. So, Greg, I wasn't surprised by last week. Sure, 5 looked really jarring and it was really unusual, but is it that greatly different from 7? So, I wasn't surprised by that, and of course normalities return this week. We have Cambridge racing Thursday night, Alexandra Park racing Friday night with really big fields. So, yeah, I'm surprised anybody thought last week was a major aberration because, as I said, Te Araha just disappeared last Friday, Greg, and I haven't heard a person in galloping mention it.
No, let's move on to the park on Friday night and have a look at a couple of their feature races. Here's the 10th on the program. It's only a small field, of course, but it is the Magnus Benroe Sire Stakes 2-year-old fillies heat number 1, and Michael Sky Delight comes up with barrier 1 off the back of a couple of really good performances, including that second last time at Group 2 level.
I'll be happy, Greg, to tip her as the bet of the week, but obviously you can't tip $1.45 chances bet of the week. But look, she was enormous first up, went second to Passion and Power, then last start. This is her leading, and okay, she is beaten here and beaten here fair and square by Stephen Reid stomping down the outside. But look, this was her second ever career start. She had copped a bit of pressure. She stuck on really well here because I thought there was a really good chance 2 or 3 horses could run past her. That's her fighting back on the inside for second. The horse who beat her on this occasion, She's a Lady's not there, Greg. She's either going to be in front or in the trail, and I think probably in front. So I think she'll win. Not overly engrossed by $1.45, Greg, but if you're having a multi-bet, on what you saw of her during the carnival, surely she's probably close to over the line.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're absolutely right. Scott Phelan takes the reins, obviously, with Zachary down at Addington Raceway. Platinum's been good and should sit in the trail, therefore it might just become a drag race between that pair. Let's have a look at race number 7. This is an excellent field headed up by Above and Beyond, who's come up with barrier number 1. Delightful Major, who's been solid without winnings, a $6 chance. Wainui Creek comes to Alexandra Park off the back of a Group 1 winning performance in the Breeders and hasn't that form well and truly stacked up out of her win there. $5.50 about On the Cards, who's been racing great. But let's go back to Wainui Creek and her performance to beat Better's Heart, who's now a Group 1 winner herself, of course, Michael.
And of course, a Miracle Mile contestant as well. So there's Princess Tiffany dropping out. Better's Heart, who was really, really good in second and excellent heading on to Menangle. Out wide is Step Up, and of course Step Up is racing now from the John Caldo barn and Marie Caldo's barn for the next few weeks. Races in the Jody's Bay, but Melton on Saturday night. You're right, Greg, very, very strong form here. A lot's going to depend on how ready she is. I presume she went home and had a few easy days after this race, Greg. It's now 5 weeks ago, so I'm not sure. I might try and ring Barry Purdon and get the lowdown on her versus On the Cards, and you'll be able to find that on either the Herald's website or hrnz.co.nz on Friday morning, Greg, because unfortunately we're not going to have on-track presenters for a while because things are changing at trackside, and therefore otherwise we would just tell the big fish to go interview them. But there'll be no fishy time for a little time at the moment. So what we're going to try and do, Greg, also, and this is important for punters, we are going to have less presenters on track. That's going to happen. So websites like loveracing.co.nz for the galloping people, but Harness Racing New Zealand's website, which is very good, will try and pump out more information to try and provide people with information, Greg, and then guys like yourself will be in the studio, and I know you'll make a whole stack of phone calls, and we'll try and keep people's information levels up from there. But it is going to be weird, Gregory, for people not having presenters on track, but we'll try and do our best, people like you, me, and everybody else who works at trackside, and people who work for Harness Racing New Zealand, and the Informant and those sort of people, just to try and keep people informed, because we want them to keep betting.
Yep, we certainly do, Michael. She finished third at the workouts at the weekend, 57.5, 28.6, so that was behind Above and Beyond. So she's been ticked over and now she's had a workout. She should be pretty hard to beat. That is a wrap on our preview of the 2 feature meetings on Friday night, particularly the premiere at Addington Raceway. Stick with us when we come back. A whole lot more information on your box seat. In the home straight, in your box seat, we've had a look at first class winning at Wyndham, of course, in the kindergarten, but the other feature was the Wyndham Cup. I wanted to go back and have a look at this, Michael. This is Tri-Royale Brigade, one of three in the race for Nathan Williamson, settled in the trail. It's Tim Williams getting it off the fence. This is the full brother to Classy Brigade, of course, who's won 15 races and close to $400,000. He's a smaller version of the horse that's finished second in the New Zealand Derby, of course, but gee, that's just continued the run of Tim Williams. And Nathan, he does a very good job. He's got some decent stock around him at the moment, and his team continues to race very, very well. Yeah, they do. Nathan's doing a super job. So he's one of the first people I head to when I look to have a bet in the Deep South. He's one of the trainers I'm happy to be on, but Tim Williams absolutely flying at the moment, and confidence is a great thing, Greg. So, yep, he's one of the form players heading into the autumn. This horse looks a pretty nice horse, Greg. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a horse who turns up at Addington at some stage and can snare a nice enough win, because the better intermediate grade horses in Southland, there's been that seen from a vintage cheetah type horse in the past, Greg. I think they're good enough to play at Addington for sure. So I think, look, a lot of people, you watch those races, Greg, and you start to think, well, without being melancholy, are we still going to have those in a month? So at the moment, we might as well enjoy them, Gregory, because just watching that replay there, I was like, gee, I hope they're still going down there in a month. But yeah, that's a story for out of,
of
course, Tri-Girl Brigade, who, didn't she finish second in a Harness Jewels, maybe behind Kiwi Ingenuity? So, gee, it's a good, strong family, isn't it?
It is, and as you said, by Classy Brigade's the brother, so there's enough to suggest there this horse could stick around for a while, because Classy Brigade's had some real longevity under difficult circumstances.
Michael, I touched on it with Peter Jensen, but the Team Teal campaign has come to an end after about 6 or 7 weeks. On Friday night, I caught up with Courtney Clark to get the rundown on how successful the third ever Team Teal promotion here in New Zealand has got on. Courtney, the Teal campaign that's been in operation now for 3 years, it's such an important part of the marketing team's effort in the early stage of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, Greg. It's just a great campaign that everyone gets behind, and it's so good to see the industry supporting it like they have.
Look, your expectations at the start of it, and it basically runs over 6 or 7 weeks, was to get to about 40,000, but you've well and truly gone past that.
Yeah, it's looking like we're going to get to 50, which is just remarkable, and I actually can't believe it, because 3 years ago our target was 20,000, and then to get to 50 is just incredible.
Let's talk about some of the success, and you have your ambassadors, and this time it's been headed up by Sam Otley, who's nearly 1/4 of the races that the ladies have won in that period.
Yeah, she's won a fair few, so that's really good, and I think all the 4 ambassadors have all won a race, which is really cool.
And of course, you've had the female-only races. You've had half a dozen of those, and gee, they've been strongly supported by the trainers and the owners, and everyone's got right behind them, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, and at Banks Peninsula last Sunday they actually got 2 off the ground, which was really awesome to see because of the amount of nominations.
Let's talk about how this all came about. Duncan McPherson lost his wife, decided he wanted to do something positive, hence the reason the Teal campaign, both sides of the Tasman's now in vogue.
Yeah, that's correct, and I think they came over about 3 years ago and approached us and said, do you want to be involved? Australia's involved, and do you want to be involved as well? And we just jumped at the chance to do something that's related to such a good cause.
2 out of every 3 women that get diagnosed with an ovarian cancer don't survive. That's pretty startling stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and just to hear that there's some women out there that have become aware of ovarian cancer through their campaign just makes it all more worthwhile.
And part of the money that you guys have raised, and has raised both sides of the Tasman's, going to go in, because there's not actually a test currently that's available, so that money will go towards potentially that being able to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So all the funds raised will stay in New Zealand, and they go towards clinical trials specifically this year, which is really cool.
Each time a female driver driving in the Teal Pants, of course, wins, there's 3 important facets to it, isn't it? 3 people put money in, which means $400 drops in each time.
Yep, so Harness Racing New Zealand came on board with the $200, Woodland Stud with $100, and each of the clubs support it with $100 as well. So that's just, it's just remarkable.
All right, well, congratulations on what you guys have put together. It certainly creates a fair amount of buzz, and I know over at the coast you saw everyone wearing the teal, the likes of the Reefton Club getting right behind it. It's certainly a real positive for the game, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and I'd just like to thank everyone for getting behind it. The support this year has been incredible, and hopefully it will only grow in the years to come.
And a big congratulations to Courtney Clark and her team, Michael, because this has been a nationwide drive to generate some income and to get over $50,000 towards this very important cause. We really should take our hats off to them.
Yeah, and it's important, Greg, in the context of what we're going through now, because when any racing integration with the community happens, we say we're not just about making money, we're going to get involved with you, and Alice's done the same thing with Ronald McDonald House, and many of the racing clubs around the country raise money for local charities. Greg, what it says to people is we're not just a business, we're part of your community. We have people who live in your community and people who use your creches and people who use your hospitals. Well, that feels very real now, because we're also now going to say to the community, hey, we want to keep racing and we want to keep this industry going and we don't want to be shut down. And if we do shut it down, people are going to lose their jobs and their livelihoods. So that integration between the community and racing is really important, Greg, because there'll be people out there who don't particularly like racing saying, well, why are they running races at Addington and I can't play rugby on Saturday? And it's really important that people understand that we are part of New Zealand and not just some bunch of weirdos who are making money watching horses go around in circles. And that might sound a bit glib, but it's actually true. That's why I've always been huge for the integration of the community into racing and making racetracks places people go because they feel like that it's a responsible part of the community. Because at the moment, Greg, that goodwill going both ways has never been needed more.
And no better example of that, Michael, than at the Rural Games, and in particular the awards that they had there on Friday night, where Ricky May got the Lifetime Legacy Award. He gratefully received that. He was a bit shocked by it all. It's a big occasion. I didn't realise. I was lucky enough to be there over the weekend for the games itself. But the dinner the night before, there was over 400 people there, and they recognised rural sports people and their achievements from the previous year, or in this case, over his lifetime and his legacy in farming. Because, of course, as we know with Ricky, he loves and is very passionate about his farming. But also, we had Sarah O'Reilly getting the Young Sportsperson of the Year, the reigning National Junior Drivers Champion, Australasian Champion, and a wonderful advertisement for our sport. She got up and spoke, and I've seen a little bit of the footage of that, and she was nothing short of outstanding, Michael. And there are two awards that, again, integrate us into other areas, and obviously racing is predominantly in the rural areas where we train our horses, but it was a big night on Friday night.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Sarah's a delightful young lady, and I spoke to her when she won the Australasian Junior Drivers Championship. She spoke like a person who other people would like to see. I think that's important too. I think it's important we just don't talk about horses and racing all the time. She spoke like a young person who was achieving her goals and was really proud of her family. I like your terminology for Ricky May. He was shocked. I'm glad it wasn't the defibrillator, Gregory, going off. These days when Ricky gets a shock, I think he's happy that it's not that sort of shock. So I talked to the little man last week, and he was in really good spirits. And as he told us last week for the stories which are on the websites, he doesn't intend to be back driving, Gregory, until the new season. But he has been back in the sulky. He has driven fast work, and I think at the moment, Greg, everybody likes to have any sort of feel-good story in their life, considering where we were with that story 2.5 months ago. The fact that Ricky is back driving work, he's taking it nice and slowly, but he's going to be back driving in the new season, Greg. That's still it's not the biggest story of the harness racing season anymore, because what we're going through now it's the best story of the harness racing season.
Yep, I absolutely concur there, Michael. What about what's ahead for us harness racing-wise this weekend? And we kick things off with Cambridge. 9 races there, 5:36, $20,000 in the Fast Track Insurance Pick 6 there. Alexandra Park up the road. There's that Sire Stakes heat with Magnus Benro we mentioned before. 10 races, so 19 in the north this week. Well done to all our horse trainers and connections there. 5:48 the start. The premier meeting with all of those features at Addington Friday night, 5:38. The 10 race program there, and also a $20,000 pick six if you want to get involved in that. Winton, they start at 12:10. It's all mile day down there, which always love this meeting. They'll be flying around the Winton circuit. The 10 races there, and it's Waimate Cup Day on Sunday, 12:05 the start time, with the 11 races and a $10,000 bonus quaddie. And Wingatui on Monday, that is their anniversary, I think, from memory. 8 races there, 12:03 will be the start time. And then the Manawatu, they kick in with a meeting next Wednesday, 9 races with a start point of 16 minutes past 2. Best bets, well, Michael, given we need to back more than one, we've both decided to come up with 3 winners each. For me, saw that trial before with Oscar Bonavina and Winterfell. Majestic Lavros split them, so he must go close to winning race number 1 on Friday night. Thought the player was outstanding first up, gets a great chance in race number 8, and C Mark on that day at Winton, trained by Regan Todd. His stable's certainly in wonderful form. Missed away last time, won't miss away over the short course. Should be hardest to beat there.
Mate, I hate backing horses from bad draws, but here's 3 of them. Monkey Selfie Junior Drivers Race, Dylan Ferguson, one of the best in the business there, was enormous 2 starts ago. Even broke 3:30 after galloping last start for 2,700 metres. Galloped in the straight, lost 10 lengths, still broke 3:30. If it trots all the way, it'll be winning race 5 at Cambridge Thursday night. On the cards, comes out of open class racing. It's 5.50 in the early markets. That's really good money. It may have to go back at the start. That makes it tricky, but each way chance, and triple weight again. Very good each way money. He's probably the best horse racing in the whole country this week, Greg, on exposed form. He's 3rd in an Auckland Cup, and you're getting 5.5 for him. So there's 3, couple of them at decent odds. Monkey Selfie, Greg, I'd be more than happy to take anything around $2.24.
All right, what about our Woodlands winner from last week? Stylish Memphis rocked back into town off the back of the New South Wales Oaks victory and completely dominated her Neverly Stud Heat, and she was way too good for them. So that's our Woodlands winner for the week. Michael, this is the last box seat in the foreseeable future. Obvious the reasons around that. Programming here on Trackside is going to stop and cease just for hopefully a short period of time, but in these times it's hard to predict if and when we might be back.
True. And Greg, you know, harness racing we hope will continue onwards and have no breaks, and we hope one day the show may come back. But everybody who's let us into their Wednesday nights or watched us online overseas on YouTube or has been part of our show, to all of our guests this season, we've had a whole lot of guests on this season. It's been wonderful to get your information, and everybody who's taken time to talk to us, thank you for that. And to the people who have watched at home, Gregory, thank you for your Wednesday nights. It's been a privilege to be part of them.
Yeah, it certainly has been, Michael, and a big thank you to you for your contribution as well. But for now, in terms of your box seat with Woodland Stud, it's bye-bye, you stay well.